TV from infinite universes. Look.
So I've been watching some old ass horror movies recently, and I have to admit, they aren't that scary. Now, don't get me wrong, I love horror movies. It is by far my favorite genre. And I would rather watch classics like Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, Scream, which is like my favorite fucking horror movie ever. I would happily take them over the predictable dog shit you get nowadays.
Piece of subhuman trash!
There was something magical about those movies that I feel like you can't really replicate anymore. Like the grittiness you get from shooting on film is absolutely crazy, and that's why these movies have such a distinct look about them. But I don't think they're as scary as they used to be, especially to younger audiences. And this got me thinking, why? Why aren't they that scary? Everyone says they are, but I'm not scared. Entertained, sure, but not scared. I remember when I was a kid and my mum would tell me about the scariest movies she's ever seen. She would tell me about how movies like Alien, The Omen, Halloween, Texas Chainsaw Massacre were all so scary. But the one movie she would hype up the most was The Exorcist. And when I got told I was old enough, around 12-ish, I watched it. And I didn't find it scary at all. In my opinion, it's one of the most overrated movies I've ever seen. Pretentious film nerds will praise it for being one of the scariest movies of all time, but it's not. A lot of it just boils down to cheap shock tactics, and because of this movie's R rating, the people and critics going to watch it at the time were mainly adults who probably had kids. So seeing a little girl piss on the carpet in front of her mother's friends and yell "fuck me" while stabbing her hoo-ha with a cross is probably the most terrifying thing a parent could see. Plus, let's be honest, compared to nowadays, kids and even teens were sheltered as fuck back then. So when they see a 12-year-old girl looking like this and speaking like this, that would be pretty fucking scary. Like, take yourself back to the 70s. Gaming was pretty much subjugated to the arcade. Yeah, there were consoles like the Magnavox Odyssey or the Atari Pong, but they didn't really sell many units worldwide compared to later on with the mega success of the PS2, selling like 155 million units. So home consoles really weren't a thing, and the arcade didn't exactly become popular until the late 70s to early 80s. Plus, games back then, well, they looked like this. Whilst kids in the 70s were playing Pong and anti-aircraft, kids born in the 90s onwards grew up fucking virtual prostitutes, committing mass murder, robbing banks, and disemboweling people, all in the name of fun. I mean, you gotta do a little more than a girl going to bother me. Not to mention, you couldn't watch movies at home like you can now. You either had to have cable TV and tune in at certain time slots, or a VCR. But a VCR? That shit was expensive as fuck, selling at roughly $1,200 US. With inflation, that is like $4,500. That is an insane amount of money to be able to watch movies in the comfort of your own home. Plus, buying one movie at the store, like one VHS tape, costed about $70 in today's currency. So it's pretty safe to assume that only well-off people had VCRs in their home. Nowadays, kids have access to literally any movie ever made through streaming services, YouTube, DVDs, and more. All for free or at a very minimal price. And then there's the internet, which is basically raising children at this point. With this invention, you can basically look up and read or watch anything. I mean, LiveLeak is literally a website dedicated to gore porn. I mean, fuck man, I remember when I was 12 and hearing about the ISIS beheading videos on the news. Or probably the most infamous video on the entire internet, 2 Girls, 1 Cup. Like, if it weren't for the internet and social media, that shit would never have circulated the way it did. Meaning little old me would never have witnessed 2 girls doing what those 2 girls did in that video. Growing up in the 21st century, you're subjected to shit at a young age that no one from any other prior generation was. So watching Freddy Krueger cut off his fingers was scary back in the 80s, but nowadays, that's pretty fucking funny. Watching a shark eat a young boy was very frightening back in the 70s, but nowadays, if a kid was gobbled up by a shark and the government wanted to kill the shark, there would be 14-year-old girls lobbying on Twitter with a hashtag #SharkLivesMatter2 or some shit. I mean, times have changed. Gen Z and, I guess, millennials are just desensitized to everything. That classic horror movies just don't do the trick anymore. I mean, for fuck's sake, this used to scare people. A woman in green makeup scared children back in the 30s. Meanwhile, kids today are watching Marvel movies, Lord of the Rings, and even It without getting scared. Like, come on bro, I'll rest my case.